Alrighty. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for our Torah Anytime viewers for joining. Those that want to join us live are more than welcome to join our WhatsApp group where we always post the information on the classes. You can see those links usually on the YouTube links below. Mirza Hashem is going to be also on the Torah Anytime thing once this allows to gives us the description. But in any case, let's get started with a topic that it's something I tend to always think my topics are important because that's why I'm speaking about it, and obviously I'm very passionate about it. Tonight we're learning Lilu Nishmas Rabbi Avram ben Chaim Yehuda and Yechazkel ben Rabbi Avram, as well as Lilu Nishmas Ozer ben Avram. So when the reason, why I feel this topic is of utmost importance is growing up. And maybe not that long ago, I remember going into the 3 weeks, going into the 9 days, going into Tisha B'Av. It's kind of a time period where you're like, I kind of can't wait till this is over. It's like a countdown, 9 days left, got the week of, depending if you're Sephardi or not. So we have this feeling that is very unfortunate, obviously very wrong, and that is we just can't wait till it's over. And, lahavdil, you don't want to be like one of the, it's not like you're in the DMV and you're just like, I can't wait to get out of here, right? Nothing in life, very important thing, nothing in life, and it's a very hard thing what I'm about to say, is that we should just wait until it's over. Living life to its fullest, again, easier said than done, living life to its fullest is getting the most out of every moment. So if we're supposed to, there's a reason why this is here, right? There's a reason why the 3 weeks are here. There's a reason why Shabbat Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz is here. There's a reason why Tisha B'Av is here. There's a reason why the 9 days are here. And the reason is not for just HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God was sitting there and be like, when is the worst time that smack in the middle of summer vacation, let me slap them with no music, no swimming, no fun, no happy, obviously that's not true, but we have to put these things together. Also, why specifically in this period of time? We know obviously the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, but there's actually a broader picture which I hope we'll be able to tap into tonight. So the question really that we need to deal with is that we're coming to these days, and it's. These days are it's sort of like we're ingrained in how we feel. We associate, certain things right away. And if you do that association game, that where you shoot something out, like a word out or a sentence out, and you ask the other person to say first thing that comes into your mind, right? So if you say 9 days or Tisha B'Av or things like that, the more righteous people will say the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, but you'll have people, no meat, no new clothing, these are the things that we associate it with, and we kind of are looking at it from a very, very small lens, a very small perspective, and then hence we're coming and looking at it from a completely, wrong angle. And that's how we have this feeling of let's just get this over with. And we justify this feeling because we're in mourning, and no one wants to be in mourning. No one wants to be in mourning, whether it's in the Beit HaMikdash, regardless, whatever it is. You just want to move on to the next step, right? To the good stuff in life, right? We all want the good stuff. So I'd like to share with you from two main sources tonight. One is Reb Shimshon Pincus, another one is from Malach Biderman, some of the stories that I brought in. And Reb Shimshon Pincus asks, a question that, not even a question, puts it more in a sense of understanding of we seem to have very, very hard time as a generation, as a whole, with the idea of fasting and mourning. These concepts are very, very difficult for us to understand, meaning that we feel like it serves no positive purpose. You look back to all your fasts, right? So you nap, you just try to pass the time, just get it over with. You just let's do whatever we can to take our mind off something, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We just try to avoid the thoughts and just pass it on to just get it over with. So we're obviously not tapping into, we're missing something. We're missing something really, really big, because this is a big chunk of the way that we look at Judaism in general. Yeshiva Beit HaMikdash is all over, like every holiday, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, we have all this concept over here. And then when it comes to time, we just let's fast forward, like put this on two speed. And the Gemara on Taanit tells us on page 30b that whoever mourns on Yerushalayim will merit to see its joy. So that means that this is quite an important aspect in Judaism, and we seem to be missing a big part of it. The Chafetz Chaim said that in the future, everybody will come to the gates of Yerushalayim, and the Kohanim, it's going to be like magnificent, right? The Kohanim are going to be offering karbanos, Levim are going to be singing. I don't know if anybody has done, there's a thing by the coastal tours, in that area, in that plaza there, you're able to do this like VR thing where you're able to like see what's going on, like in the Beit HaMikdash. Obviously everything is virtually recreated, but it's like fascinating when when you're sitting there. This is just like virtually, and we're trying to piece a bunch of things together. But imagine you're sitting there, and it's like the Beit HaMikdash is here. The Levim are singing, the Kohanim are offering karbanos. You see this magnificent, the structure, like the fire coming down from heaven. Like everything is just like mind-blowingly awesome. And everybody's going to line up because everybody's going to want to go in. Says the Chafetz Chaim, but only those invited are going to go in. And he added that in his heart, he hopes that he davens that he is going to be invited in. This is the way the Chafetz Chaim was thinking. And says the Chafetz Chaim, who's going to be let in? Like, who's going to be invited? Who's not going to be invited? Someone who felt the mourning. So we know we need to mourn. We need to mourn over the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. We need to have this, this kind of feeling. But we have this conflicting feeling. But why? So what? So are we is kosher going to change? No. Are we going to keep Shabbos differently? No. Are we going to learn differently? No. Everything's going to kind of like stay the same, especially if you go according to the Rambam with Mashiach. We're not going to get into that whole spiel. But in any case, you have many people that say like, yes, we long for Mashiach. We want for Mashiach to come. Maybe it could be for Tekes Mason. Maybe it could be to see a lost. But at the end of the day, there is this lack of like the actual desire, want, need for the Beit HaMikdash. Unfortunately, again, the lack of desire is unfortunate. To come. So and takes Rabbi Shimshon Pincus a step further, that he explains when he would give shiurim, he would notice that there would be a difference if he would be giving a lecture on things like Ben Adam L'Chavero, so you're talking about, let's say, character traits improvements, or Shalom Bayis, marital harmony, or smiling, being happy, doing good to others, that the audience doesn't have a hard time understanding the ideas, the concept as difficult and as harsh, and they're okay with it. But once it starts coming into Ben Adam Lamakom, between us and God, like the topic switch it's a topic that is just between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everybody's like, it's only on my level, it's only if I'm holding, I might not be holding, meaning you could talk to anybody about not being angry, and regardless of their level, they're going to be okay. But you talk to somebody else about the amount of learning, about the Shabbos, about the Kash, it depends, like what level I'm holding, and and it's very interesting to see, like there is a difference in sort of an acceptance when you're dealing with topics that are between man and his friend or her friend, or man and God, between a person and God. And if you think about the difference, there is a few things that we could consider. But number one, the relationship that we have to God versus that we have to another person, for most people, it's not the same. One is more real than the other. Now, again, it varies in intensity depending on the different person, but at the end of the day, there is a more realness factor when you're dealing with someone, that's sitting right in front of you versus somebody that or something that's beyond your ability to grasp. And it's kind of interesting when you think about it, like, but why, right? Like, we know that if you're not doing things right, that eventually, after 120, there is a cleansing process, and it's called Gehenna. It's not a fun place. You don't want to go in there. And like we know the process. So then the question is, so why isn't everybody have like a crazy fear of heaven, a fear of Shammai, Yirah Shammai. Like, no, those same people, again, most of them, are not going to violate the laws, knowing that they're going to for sure get punished and for sure get, have to pay back for whatever it is that they've done, whichever way, whether it's prison sentence or penalties or things like that. If someone knows that they're going to get caught, if someone knows that they're not going to do that. But yet, when it comes to religion, when it comes to spirituality, if you're going to, if you have a feeling that, I'm just going to do it, even though you know for certain that if you do it, you're for sure caught. So why is it different in that sense? Now, again, there's varieties and intensities in this. You have someone who doesn't believe in God versus someone that does believe in God. But the bottom line is that one is more real than the other, to each one, and again, on a different level. Now, says Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, the main avoda, the main work during these times, and not only during these 3 weeks, but actually for us being put on this earth, is to bring God into our lives, bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu into our lives, and develop a relationship that, just like that we have with a person. And the proof is, when you look at the pasuk in Vayikra, chapter 19, verse 18, famous pasuk of "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha." "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha" means that you have to love your friend like yourself. Rashi in Shabbos says, so what is this? Who is this referred to? This refers to actually a God. It actually refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because what's a person's best friend, right? Someone who gave them everything. Someone who has such a debt of gratitude because they've given him everything from A to Z, and that is none other than God. God has given us every single thing. And this is why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the Gemara in Brachos, page 28b, tells us that when he was about to pass away, he blessed, he gave a bracha to his disciples, to his students, that may it be that your fear of heaven should be like your fear of human beings. That's the level. And many of the meaning says, really? That's and halavai. Why? Because when something is real to you, you treat it very, very differently than when something is fake, obscure, or out in the... Why do people do crazy things when they're on drugs, when they're drunk, when they're all out of... Because the reality of it kind of fades away. It's like there, but not there. And depending on how intense of their, dosage that they've been taking, it makes a big difference on the reality. So unfortunately for us, and for many, many people, a friend is more real than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A friend is more real than God. So what we need to do is bring, and this is the work that we need to do, is make God real to you. We never stop to think about it, but like, how real is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? When someone goes into shidduchim, there is an introductory phase, right? You have to get to know the person, you date the person, you go out, and there's an interaction. You don't just go and be like, you look on paper, be like, yeah, this looks good. You know what? Tomorrow's the wedding, and I'll sign it off. No, there's an introductory phrase in that. There's also that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah, in Har Sinai, it says in Shemais chapter 19 verse 4, Vatem ri'isem asher asisi leMitzrayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts off with saying, you saw what I did in Mitzrayim. Why is it that we have to, in this stage where God is giving us a Torah, does God have to start off with by the way, you saw what I did in Mitzrayim? God doesn't need a flex. God doesn't need that. This is God, right? One doesn't need to say, hey, you know what I did. You know what I'm capable of. I want you to... Why? God doesn't need to do that. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say, oh, remember what you saw in Mitzrayim? And the answer is, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, that the only thing that creates a love between two people is the feeling that each one cares for the other. And that is what fosters a relationship with your spouse, what fosters a relationship with your parents or with your children. Because each one shows, I care about you, and I want the best for you, and I want to do for you, and I want to give to you. And that feeling fosters that love. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu was bringing the Jewish nation to become a Jewish nation, God is saying, all the stuff that I did, the blood, the frogs, the lice, the wild, like the darkness, the grasshoppers, the list goes on and on. All the miracles that I did, remember that. Why do I need to remember that? Because know that this is a relationship. I care about you. I love you. And I want to, to give you everything. And everything that God does, there's a purpose, there's a reason why we went to Mitzrayim and why we went out of Mitzrayim and how we went out of Mitzrayim. But God did things above and beyond the makos to show how much God loves us, and God cares about us, and God oversees everything. So this is why it starts off before Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us a Torah. It says, "Look, remember what I did. Remember what you saw in Mitzrayim. This is a relationship of love. This is a relationship of caring for each other. This is a relationship to show you that how much I care about you. During the time of the 3 weeks, this is the time that we that it's such a precious time that we get the feeling of caring about Kadosh Baruch Hu." And I want to take a little bit of a detour, but it's not a detour because this is really a main focus. And that is in regards to the topic of Hashgacha Pratis, of where God oversees every single little detail. Because the more that we see God in our lives, the more that we see Hashgacha Pratis, the more that we see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control of everything, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or anything in between, the more that we could foster that relationship, the more that we could see that, oh wait, God cares about me, and oh wait, I should care about God. I should make this real. The sense in our life, and there's stories in everybody's life. It could be small, it could be tiny, and it could be story, worthy of being written in a book, or who knows what. But at the end of the day, if you open your eyes, you'll see the instances of where God is orchestrating every detail in your life. And when you see that, then you see that God is in control. And when you see that God is in control, it means that God cares about you. And God wants only the best for you. There's a famous story that was told over by Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Reisman, but this was all over. This is all over the news. A few years ago. Rabbi Reisman is one of the most popular darshanim speakers in Eretz Yisrael. Actually in the world, he has a tremendous following. I believe in the Belz Chasidus, and he gives a daily shir in the Beis Yeshua Beis HaMedrash. This is in Rehov Minchas Yitzchak. Now, he always gets calls to go and speak either in Europe or in America, and they'll fly him out, and they'll pay for his expenses, and they'll give him a nice speaking fee, like cover everything. He always says no. Like as a policy, he always says no. He has Baruch Hashem a huge following in Eretz Yisrael. The thing that's recorded goes online. He says, "Why am I running around the world? I'll give the share here. It goes everywhere." So he always refuses an invitation. One day he gets a call from a person in Antwerp, in Belgium, and he says, "Can you come and give a shir, by us?" And he says, "No, like as usual." He says, "I'm sorry, I'm not able to have a shir every single day over here in Eretz Yisrael. I can't go." And for whatever reason, this person was very persistent, kept on calling, and for a reason that even he claims, I don't know what overcame me, because I never say yes, but I decided, okay, fine, I'll go. And almost immediately afterwards, I'm like, wait a minute, why did I just say that I'm gonna go? I don't want to go. I want to stay over here. I want to give my share over here. I'll go. I don't need to. Well, why am I gaining from going back and forth? Finally, he decides. He calls the guy back up, and he says, "Can you do me a favor? Can we cancel this thing? I was thinking about it. I can't go." And the guy says, "Rabbi, I don't know what to tell you. We already sent the advertisement. It went to multiple different shuls. We can't really cancel at this time." So he said, "If you can't cancel it, fine. So I'll go." The orchestrator, he'll leave in the morning, fly out in the morning, give the shir, come back on the same day, only miss one day, give the shir in a different, in Antwerp, and then come back to continue the following day. That particular day that he went out was a Tuesday. And because there was no shir, nobody came to the shul, nobody came and learning, and there was a Arab terrorist that was in the vicinity, that they looked in the security cameras, and he was waiting in front of this shul, and then he got very, very frustrated. He got out of his car, started walking in the building, so no one's in the building, got out and started, unfortunately he did take, a Jewish life, a carbon, Rabbi Shayahu Kershtievsky, if I'm pronouncing it right, and he eventually got, got subdued, let's just call it. And then they did a further investigation, and they realized that this person, this Arab terrorist, was scouting this particular shul for quite a few days. And he kept on coming, and he saw that every day, a little bit after 10 o'clock, hundreds of people leave out this shul. And he's like, so you know what, this is perfect. He says, I'm going to go, and he prepared a terrorist attack, waiting for these people to come out, and then, either ram into them, or, he had a knife, whatever, go and kill as many, unfortunately, and many Yidden as he possibly can. And he's sitting there, and he's waiting, and he did all the recon. He prepared everything, he looked everything, he searched everything, and then the day comes, and no one's around. And no one's around. Unfortunately, he did end up taking one carbon. But when you look at the larger picture, he wanted to kill who knows how many Jewish people, and for reasons that only after the fact you look at. Why did Rabbi Reisman say yes, and he flew out, and he didn't even have a replacement, and how things worked in such a order that it just completely disrupted this entire terrorist plan, and who saved who knows how many lives. And we look at this story, and we have to take a step back and realize that something that never happens, he never cancels it. He never goes there, never, and everything just started, happening. There's someone that's watching over. There's got to be a rhyme or reason. You can't say this is just happenstance. You can't say that it's no explanation for it. It's obvious. It's so obvious that God is there, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is overseeing it. And the truth is, in our lives also, sometimes it's so obvious. It's right there, God is showing you, hey, I'm here. And it should be if it's not anything but, even if the wake up call is just oh wow, God, oh, I see you, I love you. That in itself is a huge win. We have to stop sometimes and be wait a minute, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I see you. You're real. I see you care. You're over, it's so obvious. Other times, it's not so obvious. Rabbi brings down a story from the Rebbe of Kutsk. He had a guy came over to him, and he says, Rabbi, I used to be very wealthy, and then unfortunately he lost all his money. His wife died, and he said that he had a custom that when he was wealthy, every week he would buy a lottery ticket. But he wouldn't just buy for himself. He would buy one lottery ticket for himself and one lottery ticket for his maid who worked for him. And he would check both tickets to see if they won. He says after he lost his money, after he lost his wife, he continued this habit. One day he looks at the tickets, and he notices that the ticket that he bought for his maid won. And he decided that, now she's a wealthy person. He decided that he wanted to marry her, and then this way he'll be able to have a share in that wealth. But he realized that if he tells her that she's wealthy, she might not want to marry him because he's not wealthy anymore. So he decided he's going to withhold this information. And he goes to a shadchan and just, set it up. And the shadchan goes over to this maid and says, "Are you interested in marrying your boss?" Whatever. They try to work out, and she agrees, and he agrees, and then they go and they get married. Shortly after the wedding, he goes and he tells her, "By the way, it turns out your lottery won. We're rich. We're very wealthy." And she gets a serious look on her face, and she's like, "Not really." He's like, "What do you mean?" He says, I sold the rights of my lottery tickets to my father. And, so it's not our money, it's our father's money. So now, this man is coming over to the Rebbe of Kutsk, and he says, "That's why I'm here right now." He says, "I'm here right now because I want to divorce this woman. I only married her because she was going to get money." And it turns out it's not. So the whole purpose is null and void. Can I go and divorce her? So the Kutsk Rebbe replied, he says, "Haven't you grasped by now? Did you not realize God runs the world? He made you poor. Your wife is no longer alive. He made the maid win the lottery, so you should marry her. So many things happen, so you should be in this situation right now, and you're gonna go and throw that all away. Do you not realize that everything happens from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you're in your situation because God wants you to be in that situation?" There's mikra, which is, the literal translation means happenstance. Things that just happen, let's call it random. Tzaddikim, righteous people, don't call mikra mikra, but rather rak mi Hashem. You scramble those letters and it spells out rak mi Hashem. Everything is only from God. There's no such thing as a random occurrence. There's no such thing as, I planned this and I got to this stage and I got to this stage and and it's like, no, that's not the way that, you're supposed to think. And there's a person, I didn't ask him, so I can't really say his name. A rabbi of a very large organization. I find him a mind-blowing idea that I don't know if he thought it was mind-blowing. Explain it. We were working on a certain project, and it was just like one thing after another. It was just not panning out. And then we came up with different pivoting different ideas, going different directions. And he said something. He says, all the mistakes that we made in the past, he says that's irrelevant right now. I look for the future. I look for what's going to be. And the reason why it was so mind blowing is so many of us are held back by our past. We're held back by where we were and how we got to where we were. And so we invested into this and we can't, we have all these different cheshbonos. And if we think, no, wait a minute, let's just move forward from where we are right now. I don't know what the terminology for this thought idea, I guess you could call it, is. But have you ever? I'm sure you've had this conversation, before. Imagine you were just created this second. This second you were just created, but everything in previous was all that history was implanted as a memory for you. It's a very trippy thing to think about, meaning that imagine that we're all right now created, and everything, including this speech, including the beginning, including this entire day, God just implemented in our mind as if it was reality. So meaning that everything beforehand was not really real. It's just a memory. It's just but it didn't really happen, so to speak. Now, how would your mindset be different? We are in a trajectory of where we live our life based off on our past. And, because we kind of think that, one thing led to another to bring us over here, to bring us over here. So we're kind of stuck over here. But if you're living your life, that everything is orchestrated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that everything is from God, your mind, your the way that you see things, the way that you think about things is completely different. And the way to start seeing that way, the way that you're able to start looking at this perspective is realizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has His hand in every single aspect of your life. Everything in your life, whether it was your mistake, whether it was not your mistake, whether it was everything was orchestrated or was allowed, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even to the extent of somebody else planning against you. Listen to this. So there's a pasuk in Mishlei, chapter 19, verse 21, that says, Rabbi's machshavos b'lev ish. Very, very famous pasuk. Rabbi's machshavos b'lev ish means there are many thoughts in a person's mind. But va'atzas Hashem hisakum. But God's plan, that's what's going to stand. Ask the Vilna Gaon. Says the Vilna Gaon. Why does it say Rabbi's machshavos b'lev ish? It starts off with machshava, which is many are the thoughts of a man, and then it doesn't say that the machshava of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it says va'atzas Hashem hisakum. It says there's the two words are used over here as machshava and eitzah. They're not the same. So shouldn't we use the same terminology, meaning that man thinks a lot, but God, will, actually act or whatever he wants? Why is it different in thought and then eitzah, which is a device? Then the answer is, explains the Vilna Gaon, we have many ideas, many thoughts, and those all are eternal. But then we have something that enters from outside. A device is a thought that comes from outside. And what the pasuk is telling us, explains the Vilna Gaon, that you can have many ideas and many thoughts, but at the end, Hashem could introduce a thought through an advice of someone else, and that will come out through His will. So listen to this story to bring out this point. There was two rabbis. To simplify it, they lived in two different cities. One, the father of the daughter was very, very poor, and they were both rabbis. They both had children. One, obviously, the boy, one of the girl. And the rabbi of the girl, the father of the girl, saw this great option for a shidduch, and he's like, okay, awesome. So he said, promised a big dowry that would go and bring into the marriage. And the custom was during those times was that you don't set a date until the dowry is paid up. So we know the couple set up and they're able to start their life. But this never happened. The dowry never came. Now, in the area of the father of the bride, the father of the Kala, he was a rabbi in this community. And this particular community was known to have very high-end grapes and wines that the people would sell, export, style business. And in order to go and sell wine, these grapes or wines to Jews, the merchant would need to have a certificate from the rabbi. So there's one particular certificate that went to this rabbi, the rabbi, which is again the father of the bride, and he says, "Can you give me a certificate for my product so I could sell to the Jews?" And he was Jewish as well, and the rabbi refused. Says, "No, can't do it." It wasn't because he wasn't sure about him. It wasn't sure because he didn't know about him. It was because he knew about him, didn't trust him, and he says, "No, I'm not giving you a kashrut certificate. I don't believe that you're going to follow the law, whatever it is, whatever the reason was, and I'm not giving it to you." This guy became very bitter, very angry, and he wanted to take revenge. And he knew that this rabbi and the other rabbi in a nearby town, their children were meant to get married, but there was a holdup because the dowry wasn't sent over. So he decides he's going to go and travel to the other city where the rabbi, the father of the groom is. And he goes and he meets with the rabbi over there. The rabbi welcomes him and he says, "Where are you from?" And he says the town of the rabbi of the father of the bride. And he says, "Oh, do you know my future father, my future mechutan?" And he says, "Yes, of course I know him. How's he doing?" He starts asking questions. He starts blurring out. He says, even if he sells every single item in his house, he will never be able to pay that dowry. He's poorer than poor. There's nothing to talk about. You're never going to get this money that was promised to you. His intention was to ruin this marriage. His intention was, you know what? This rabbi didn't let me sell my grapes, my wine. I'm going to make sure these kids don't get married. And that was his intention. But when the father of the groom heard that the father of the bride doesn't have the money to pay for it, he says, "So why are we waiting for? If we're not getting the money anyways, let's just go and get the wedding, the ceremony in order, and let's just move on with the wedding." This person, his whole intention was to ruin this wedding, but really what he ended up doing was making the wedding happen and making it happen quicker. Explains, Rabbi Biderman. It says, Rabbi's machshavas belevish. You have somebody that has many thoughts, and he's going to even want to go against you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make it that even the thoughts against you will circle around and go and make it for your benefit. And that's the way that we need to live our lives. Again, easier said than done, but we have to see the divine intervention. And we see the divine intervention and things in our life, we live differently. And any aspect, in this past week's parsha, Parshas Matzeh, the pasuk tells us the Egyptians, when the Jews left Egypt, the Egyptians were busy burying their dead. And Rashi says that they were turdim ba'avelam. They were so preoccupied with their mourning. And the Arameer starts explaining it, and like, what does that mean? Like, okay, they were burying their dead. Like, obviously, like, what's the big thing that the Torah is telling us over here? And the Arameer explains that they were so overcome with mourning that they were so busy and they couldn't see anything else other than what they were grieving with. And the Arameer explains this is the difference between the non-Jews, the people that don't believe in God, and people that believe in God. When someone goes and does not believe in God, then there is nothing after death. There's not, and the grief is so extenuating. It goes to the core and they can't get out of it. But on the flip side, someone who believes in God, someone who believes in the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, someone who has that mindset, then yes, of course there's a grieving process, but they trust in God. They know that the good and the bad, everything is from God. So there's a levels, there's a shiva, and then there's a shleishim, there's a process that was made. But the Mitzrayim, they were so overcome with it that they were so sucked into it that they couldn't live their lives afterwards. They were so overconsumed by it. And this is the difference, the way that we live our lives. The way we live our life with God in our lives. We live our lives like God is real. Then we have a different perspective. We have a different understanding. We have a different relationship, not only between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, between us and reality. And the pasuk tells us in Tehillim, chapter 117, verse 2, the smallest capital, the smallest chapter in Tehillim. Hallelujah Hashem kol goyim shabachu kol amim ki Ki gavar aleinu chazdai ve'emes Hashem la'olam halaluka. That's entire chapter of Tehillim. But the second verse, Ki gavar aleinu chazdai. What does that mean? Gavar aleinu chazdai. Gavar comes from the root of gevura, din. Chazdai comes from chesed, from mercy. What does it mean? Ki gavar aleinu chazdai. That has two conflicting things. One is that God's, the way that God, acts towards us could either be through judgment or it could either be through mercy. What does that mean? Ki gavar aleinu chazdai. Judgment and mercy, like together. How do we understand it? And the answer is that even when we're dealing with God's judgment, even when it's severe, strict judgment, even so, that's still chesed. There is still chesed inside over there. And this is the way that we need to look at our life. That the good and the bad, everything is through chesed. Whether it's our punishment or whether we did something wrong, everything has the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The chesed, the kindness of God. Whether it's something that we did to ourselves, whether it's somebody did to others, whether it's a family did this to us, or whether somebody is doing this, and whether this person is suing this person. We're sitting over here, and sometimes we're drowning in the difficulties that we're dealing with, and sometimes we have such a hard time just getting out of it. But if we take just a small step back and realize that this is the chesed, sometimes we can't see it. We don't see it right now and then, right? But at the end of the day, if we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just everything that He does is just chesed, even the gvura, ki gavar aleinu chesed, is also chesed. There's a different mindset. There's a different perspective. There's a different way that we see the reality. The Egyptians, when they were struck by the firstborn, they didn't realize that all their suffering is coming from God. They didn't connect this for whatever reason. They forgot about all that aspect. There is such a joy, there is such a level of happiness and contentment in life when you're religious. Like, there's no comparison when you know that there's a higher power, when you know that God is overseeing everything. There is, like, if people will understand it just from the psychological aspect, just from the, it pays itself back the kefal kaflayim like 10,000 times, even though you have some restrictions over here and you have some restrictions over there. But when you live this life, when you live a life that there is a different sense of life, everything that we all chase, whether it's power, whether it's wealth, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's happiness, whether it's pleasure, if you're able to just tap into that religion mindset, it's something that just like transform your entire being. Obviously, it has to be the right religion. Obviously, it has to be the right thing. If you're dealing with anything fake, your body senses it, your soul senses it. But at the end of the day, when you go and you follow the Torah, you follow Kadosh Baruch Hu, you connect to it, and it's real, your life is a different life. It's crazy. And to this point is that the Chazal, the Medrash tells us in Eicha Rabbah, chapter 4, verse 14, that the Churban, the destruction of the temple, was beneficial for us. It was beneficial because God took out His anger, so to speak, on wood and stone, on the temple, and not on us. And the Rizal teaches us, going a little bit into Kabbalistic ideas, the Rizal teaches us that the month of Tammuz and Av, right now we're in Av, this month and the previous month, corresponds to the eyes. One for each eye, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always watching over us during these 2 months, where Shivasar B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av, these 2 months of Tammuz and Av. This is when we think, okay, God is turning away, God is not looking, God is allowing bad things to happen to the Jewish nation. No. These months specifically are corresponding to the eyes, meaning that God sees everything. And it's very interesting. The Gemara in Taanit, page 21a, tells us that Nacham Ish Gamzu was the person that always says Gamzu Latova. Everything is for the best. That was his motto, and everything that he said. He was blind. He didn't have eyes, but yet he saw and he knew that everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So our days and our times and our lives, and sometimes we're blind and we don't see the full picture. We don't see how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is orchestrating it. And it involves with anxiety and depression, and it brings us so many mental issues. But if we take a step back and realize, no, wait a minute, even in our darkest times, in the darkest months of the year, the most difficult times, the Churban of the Beit HaMikdash, that's in reference to the eyes. The eyes were corresponding to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is always overseeing everything. That this too somehow was beneficial, and it is for the best. Now, when we see the hashgacha, when we see this, when we implement this into our lives, when we see that God is real, then all of a sudden we're developing a relationship with Him. And we realize that this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. Remember, before the Torah, it says, remember what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, remember what I did to Mitzrayim, because I love you, I care about you. This is a relationship. All the frogs, the blood, the lice, the wild animals, I did this all for you. This is a relationship. So a person can go and try to calm himself and calm the consciousness and say, you know what, the Beit HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. What's the difference? What difference do we have right now? You're missing the point. If you care, if you have a relationship with God, then you mourn for it. You mourn. God doesn't have a house. God doesn't have a place to dwell. The reality of God is not the same as it was when the Beit HaMikdash was alive. We have to go and around. We have to go and bring God into our lives. And how do we do that? We make God real. That is the tafkid. That is the purpose of these 3 weeks. We take it and we implement the difficulties. We implement all these areas and we make God real in our life. And we make God real in our life, all of a sudden we care. If we care, then we mourn. Because if we mourn, that means that we have a relationship. We have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know what the goal? This is something so mind-blowing. The goal of the 3 weeks, the first time I've heard of this concept was when I was reading this past. I believe I learned it on Shabbos. The concept of the 3 weeks is the same concept from like Rosh Hashanah to after Sukkot. So it's like 3 weeks and 3 weeks. You have over here the 3 weeks now. The goal is Simchas Torah, and you think about it. What? 3 weeks, the goal is Simchas Torah, dancing with Torah, that one of the happiest days, and like everybody's going so elated with learning and dancing, and like how do you compare to like mourning and not listening to music and not eating meat, and how do you compare? And in fact, the originator, he said about his father that he would know how his 3 weeks was in the summer. He knew how his 3 weeks were going to be in the Yom Narayim in the time of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And the reality is, the state of Simchas Torah begins on the 17th of Tammuz. Tisha B'Av is called a moed. It's called a holiday because this is time when we build a connection between us and God. When we cry for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're building a connection. We're tying something together. There's something real. There's something connected, and we're closing that gap. And this is like we're building this relationship. That's what it starts with. It's impossible, explains Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, to live without a Tisha B'Av. Because if you don't have a Tisha B'Av, you're disconnected. If you're not connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the avoda, the work of Tisha B'Av is creating that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And once you have the relationship, the goal is Simchas Torah. You start off with that relationship and be like, wait, I care about you, I love about you, and then you could get to Simchas Torah. Then you could go and understand the Torah and learn the Torah and connect to the Torah and dance with the Torah and feel it. It's all about the emotions. It's all about what we feel and how we connect. And this is what the 3 weeks is all about. So when we go and we're like, oh, I can't wait to get over. That's like going in the dating process and be like, oh, come on, is this all like I can't spend time with my wife. This is the breeding ground where we make things real. This is the time where we're able to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. David HaMelech had a whole, he made a whole decree to make 100 brachas per day. You making the idea behind that is you're making God real. God is continuous throughout the entire day. How many times we make the brachas without thinking? We make it without stopping for a second to think. It's only natural. Again, things that happen in life. It's busy. You're going right now, but you have to take a step back every so often and be like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Where am I? Like, let me take a step back over here. After World War II, the Brisker Rav, when he went traveled to Eretz Yisrael, unfortunately, he went with his, he had 5 sons and 2 daughters, but he lost his wife and 2 daughters. And there was a 7-year-old daughter of his that was very, very broken. She lost her mother. Well, can you blame her? And she had one piece of jewelry that she held so tight, and that's a necklace that her mother used to wear. This is a girl that been through so much, through the war, World War II. You're talking about the horrors of the horrors. And she escaped, and she got out, and she has one thing to remember: her precious mother. Her mother who she loved so dearly, her mother who never hug her again, never kiss her goodnight, never do anything. Can you imagine how much a little girl goes and desires? And all she had left of her mother is a broken necklace. And she kept it by her. It's her most the most prized possession. And they traveled to Eretz Yisrael. They escaped. They traveled to Eretz Yisrael, and they landed on Shabbos. They landed a few minutes after Shkia in the Friday night in Eretz Yisrael. Now, you can't carry it. You can't take it over the boat. There's a whole bunch of halachas. So the Brisker Rav told, his family, you wear whatever you can, whatever we can't carry, we have to leave it over here, and it's, the boat leaves and it's lost. And this 7-year-old girl is like, but I need mommy's necklace. This is, this connects me to mommy. This is all that I have. How do you explain to a 7-year-old girl, no, you have to leave this behind? This is, this is her mother in a sense. She can't do that. Nothing, no words will be able to ever go and say, no, you throw away. And the Brisker Rav, the way that he was able to do it, he went down, he hugged her, he spoke to her very carefully and lovingly, and he says, we love the necklace. And he gave her a whole thing. And he explained to her that, yes, the necklace is from mommy. And it's great. He says, and then he was able to pivot it in a way. He says, the necklace we love, but we love Shabbos more. And he instilled it, and somehow he was able to convince the 7-year-old girl whose most prized possession was her mother's necklace. He said, this necklace is great and it's so important, but Shabbos is so much more important. And this little girl, 7-year-old girl, she left the necklace behind and she never saw it again. She later became a rebbetzin and she said over the story. And she said, this Shabbos, the connection that I have to Shabbos is completely different. I connect to Shabbos very differently. My father taught me, Shabbos there's nothing greater than Shabbos. And it warmed her entire heart for Shabbos. We have the ability to do mitzvos in different variations, different intensity, different levels. Right? We could keep the stuff, but once and the more that you make God real, you relate to the mitzvahs very differently. When Shabbos becomes real, when God becomes real, when Kashrus becomes, you do the mitzvahs very, very differently. Everything in your mind takes a day. So the 3 weeks where we make God real in our lives is one of the most important times of the year. We are transforming our reality. We are transforming the way that we see the world. The Torah tells us there's 3 forms of purification. There's mikvah. There's something called hagala, which is putting the utensil in boiling water, and then something called libun, which is purifying sterilizing with fire. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh writes that these correspond to different levels of sins. And he gives an example. For example, you go to the mikvah, and that will help you for bad thoughts. That's a good thing to help you with bad thoughts. Let's say somebody ate non-kosher food, or anything in the kashrus related. Hagala is what you need. The cure and the tshuva is hagala. What's hagala? You don't put yourself into boiling water. Rather, it means to fast. Explains the Orach Chaim. When you fast, it your body becomes hot. It sweats. It pushes out all the forbidden stuff, and this cleanses the body and the soul. And then he goes on to explain libun. Libun is to purify with fire. How do you purify with fire? Right? We don't light ourselves on fire. How do you purify yourself with fire? Says Orach Chaim, sins like anger, not believing in the words of Chazal, not believing in the rabbis, things like that are amongst the sins that are performed with fire. How do we go and purify ourselves with fire? Right? So we said, we had fasting, we had mikvah, but how do you purify yourself with fire? And so the Orach Chaim explains that when you study Torah, and you study it consistently and in depth, Torah is fire. And when you're doing that, you're removing all the forbidden averos. You're removing the depths, the hardest things to remove, the most difficult, the highest level to be able to kasher something is through libun. That's the highest. That's the most strictest and the most the highest level. So when we do sins, the highest level to be able to purify our body, to purify our soul, to purify everything that we need to, that's through the fire of learning Torah. But there is something else that I would like to take out. And that is, there is the fire of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know that the Beit HaMikdash is going to come down, it's going to be rebuilt with fire. It's going to come down from heaven. The yearning of this is the libun, this is the work that we do. This is the learning of the Torah that we have with the fire. But even in addition to that, also the mitzvahs that we do with fire. We could do a mitzvah by rote. Yeah, we keep Shabbos, we keep kosher. We check off the boxes because we know we're supposed to do it. But then when you make God real, when everything is very real, when you see the hashgacha, you see that everything that happens is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then all of a sudden, wait a minute, you're doing the mitzvahs differently. You're praying differently. You're dressing differently. You're doing Shabbos differently. You're talking. When God is real, when you're able to make that into a reality, everything changes. And this is the avoda. This is when we come on during these times. During the 3 weeks when we're going in there and we kind of be like, okay, let's just fast forward to like, no. There's a reason for this. The whole purpose, the building of the relationship means that you make God real. If you make God real, then you care. If you care, then you're mourning. If you're mourning, then you're able to go and get into the simcha. You're able to go in and be in the joy of the rebuilding of Yerushalayim. You'll be able to go and dance during that Simchas Torah. Tisha B'Av is needed for the Simchas Torah. Tisha B'Av is needed because it makes God real. You're taking it and you're making it a reality. And how do you make a reality? Not only when the good things happen, also when the bad. The Churban, everything was for our benefit. It was for our benefit. God took the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, instead of going and destroying the Jewish nation, which we were worthy, unfortunately, of destruction at that point in time. So God took it out on the stones and the sticks. But when you think about that, that means that everything that happens in our life, whether it's good, whether it's bad, it comes up like it comes because HaKadosh Baruch Hu does even the Gvura, even the judgment comes out from Chesed. And if you look at that, then everything, God is so in our lives. Why is God always showing us in different things? If we just open our eyes that God's in our life, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing us, remember what I did in Mitzrayim. Remember, why did I do all that? Because I care about you. Before He gave us the Torah, He says, remember what I did in Mitzrayim. This is a relationship of love, of care and affection. God cares about us. Why is it so important that we know that God cares about us? Because the difference of relation, that comes from a relationship of affection, of love and caring for one another. And if we realize that God cares so much about us, that would spark within us that ability to go and say, wait a minute, but I care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu also. I care and I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I love my Father in heaven. And I can't believe He doesn't have a home. He doesn't have a place. He doesn't have the Beit HaMikdash. He doesn't have it, and the whole world is suffering because of that. When we make HaKadosh Baruch Hu real, our reality changes. The way that we see life changes. The way that we understand reality changes. We look at life completely different. We look at life with more contentment. We're happy. We're relaxed. There's no depression. There's no anxiety. Again, easier said than done. But we have to implement that into our life. And when we're able to do that, we're able to bring that fire into the avodas HaKodesh that we need to do. The avodah, the mitzvahs, the Torah, the mitzvahs, the masim time, everything we need to do, the Torah, the tefillah, everything. When we bring that fire in, we were able to bring that fire down from Shamayim for the third Beit HaMikdash. May it be rebuilt b'mehera b'yameinu. May we see it in our days. We'll say a kapitel tehillim for the entire Klal Yisrael, and then we'll open up if there are any questions. As usual, we say kapitel kuf lamed. Shir amalos mimah makim karasicha Adonai. Adonai shema bekoli tienaz necha kashuv v'is lekol tachanunai im avai neis tishmar ya Adonai mi yamoid kim chaslicha leman tivarei kivisi Adonai kif so nafshi v'lidvarei chalti nafshi la Adonai mi shomim la beker yachel Yisrael al Adonai kim Adonai chesed v'arbei moifedus Achenu kol Beis Yisrael anesunim batzara v'shevya ha'imdim bein bayom uvein bayabasha hamakam yirachem aleim v'yatzim mitzara l'rvacham afela l'ara mishiba l'gula hashta b'agala b'zman kariv v'namar amen. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for coming. May you have an easy, meaningful, and an uplifting fast, and may we see the rebuilding of the Mashiach and may we see the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash and Mashiach coming b'mehera b'yameinu. Amen.